Welcome to today's Explainer. We're unpacking a truly fascinating historical source today. We're going to be exploring a really profound, sweeping lecture that was actually delivered to a massive audience of about 8,000 people in Kobe, Japan, way back in April of 1990. It's titled Be Boundlessly Gentle, and it offers this highly structured, deeply spiritual perspective on exactly how to fix the world. And, well, spoiler alert, according to the speaker, fixing the world doesn't actually start in the halls of government. It starts right there in your own living room. We're going to take a journey through the lecture's philosophies to make these abstract concepts crystal clear. Let's get started.
Okay, let's dive right into this with the core question the speaker poses right at the top of the address. Are we just blocks of protein? Did we simply evolve from amoebas over hundreds of millions of years just to end up sitting in an auditorium? Well, the lecture forcefully argues, absolutely not. To really understand anything else in this philosophy, we first have to wrap our heads around the speaker's main premise about humanity, which is that we are fundamentally spiritual beings, not just physical matter.
So here is the roadmap for how the lecture builds this vision. First, the essence of soul and faith. Second, the materialism disease. Third, an analogy of coffee and tea. Fourth, specific gender missions. And finally, building a family utopia.
Starting off with Section 1, Essence of Soul and Faith.
The source material presents a very specific, incredibly inward-looking definition of faith. The speaker tells the audience that true faith isn't about, gazing up at the stars and worshiping some distant, untouchable God floating somewhere outside the Earth's atmosphere. Instead, it's about looking deep within your own heart. According to the lecture, your soul is literally constructed out of divine love. Faith, therefore, is simply the act of opening your heart, recognizing that internal light of love, and realizing your identity as a spiritual child of a creator. It's really an awakening to your own internal makeup.
Which brings us to Section 2, Materialism as a Disease.
The lecture argues that the modern era is quite literally infected. It describes materialism, so prioritizing the physical world, money, and status over spiritual reality, as this highly contagious disease of the mind. The speaker states that denying our spiritual existence and acting like we're just physical bodies is essentially spiritual suicide, limiting our eternal life. In fact, the speaker makes the wild claim that the world hasn't been this infected with spiritual ignorance since the final days of Atlantis, over 10,000 years ago.
But the lecture doesn't just drop that problem on us. It offers a direct solution. If materialism is a disease, what's the cure? Well, the speaker proposes a three-step mission. Step 1, you have to maintain your own spiritually healthy mind by recognizing your true nature. Step 2, you have a strict duty to act as a healer, teaching this correct, spiritual way of living to the people around you who are infected by modern materialism. And Step 3, by doing all of this, you actively transform the current era. The lecture insists, we can't change the past or the future, but those with healthy minds have an absolute obligation to change the present.
Moving right along to Section 3, Rolls, Coffee, and Tea.
Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how the speaker uses a unique analogy to explain gender equality. The lecture asserts that men and women are absolutely equal in the value of their souls, just like coffee and tea are equal in value. However, they possess profoundly distinct, non-interchangeable characteristics. Coffee represents the masculine, deep flavor, aroma, and richness. Tea represents the feminine, transparency, lightness, and a delicate scent. The speaker argues that while neither is superior, you wouldn't mix coffee into your tea and expect it to taste good, right? The core philosophical point the speaker makes here is that equality does not mean sameness.
Building on that exact analogy, the source material issues a pretty stark warning about modern societal trends. The lecture explicitly views the contemporary push for gender homogenation, specifically women competing with men in the corporate world for money, titles, or status, as a massive spiritual mistake. According to the speaker's philosophy, when women abandon their unique spiritual characteristics to emulate masculine societal roles, it's framed not as progress at all, but as a severe spiritual regression, essentially a huge step backward in the soul's evolution.
Section 4 breaks this down further. Men's responsibility and women's mission.
According to the lecture, these roles are very strictly distinct. For men, the soul is polished through responsibility. That means providing economic support, protecting the family, and being a rock-solid, exemplary figure at home. The speaker emphasizes that for a man, true gentleness can only be born out of tremendous strength. On the flip side, a woman's highest mission is acting as the energy that brings harmony to the world, and that strictly starts right in the home. The lecture is careful to note that a woman's gentleness does not equal weakness. Actually, scratch that. It's more like it requires profound courage to support a family through difficult times.
To illustrate the immense power of this female role, the speaker cites a really fascinating historical anecdote about Martin Luther, the great religious reformer. Despite fiercely battling the entire establishment of his time, Luther reportedly said that even if you offered him the entire country of Germany, he would flat out refuse it in favor of his home and his gentle wife. The lecture uses this to argue that a wife's gentle, courageous support in the background isn't some lesser job, it actually holds world-changing power, equal to the force of thousands of soldiers. It's the vital foundation that allows great historical work to even happen.
Let's move to and see how this builds to the finale in Section 5, Fortress of Light, the Family Utopia.
So, here is how all the puzzle pieces we've discussed fit perfectly together according to this 1990 lecture. It all starts with number 1, the individual's spiritual awakening, recognizing your soul is made of divine love. Number 2, applying that knowledge by harmonizing those distinct, non-competing gender roles we just went over. That naturally leads to number 3, building a trusting, peaceful home, which the speaker calls a family utopia. And finally, number 4, that localized peace spreads happiness outward to the entire world. The overarching argument here is that global transformation is literally impossible without starting from the foundation of a harmonious household.
And this brings us to the real spiritual climax of the source material. The speaker tells the audience that when a husband and wife fully trust each other, respect their distinct roles, and live by these spiritual principles, their home literally becomes a fortress of light. The lecture claims that if you were to look down from the heavenly realm, you wouldn't just see normal houses. You would actually see brilliant, glowing pillars of spiritual light radiating from these harmonious homes. The ultimate goal, the speaker concludes, is to build these fortresses one by one until the entire nation, and eventually the whole world, is illuminated.
So, the absolutely crucial point we take away from this fascinating 1990 lecture is that grand, world-saving ambitions really have to be grounded in immediate domestic peace. It's a philosophy that completely challenges the modern pursuit of status, favoring an inward-starting utopia instead. Regardless of your personal stance on the specific traditional roles outlined here, the lecture's core challenge is deeply personal. It forces us to take a hard look at our own living spaces, our own relationships, and our own inner spiritual health. So we'll leave you with this final thought derived directly from today's explainer. How brightly does the light of harmony shine in your own home?